Welcome to the Solemn Vanguard channel. Today we're discussing Aqua Force in Premium. I really want to build Premium Aqua Force. I want to bling it out, I want to go all crazy. There's actually so many build options, and so I wanted to discuss in this video what kind of options we're considering. So first of all, let's start with the grade 3s, right? We have a main grade 3. Which one? Well, we have two options basically. Assuming that you do want to use Excel circles, and I assume you do want that, we can either go with Maelstrom, Naval Gazer, or, well, Diamantes, but we haven't seen that one yet. Regardless, it's not that important because generally the Vanguard skill, well, won't matter that much since you will just stride over it. So the only choice we're making right now between Maelstrom and Naval Gazer is that Maelstrom has the Maelstrom name and Naval Gazer does not. If you're gonna run any cards that require a Maelstrom name, like Despina or some of the Strides or anything like that, you'll probably want to go with Maelstrom. However, if you're 100% sure that you're not gonna be using any Maelstrom-based names, you could go for Naval Gazer. Maybe the skill is better to close out a game if you stop striding somehow. Maybe you Megidot, didn't finish it off. You now want to go into Naval. I don't know. Something like that. Now you could just run 4 Maelstrom and 4 Naval Gazer and always make sure you have your Excel circle. That's fine. Go ahead if you want that. That's not what I want to do. Personally, I don't think our premium deck will be a full-on Maelstrom deck. Now, for example, the card Elder Moss, which is like Maelstrom's grade 2, let's say the 10k, I don't know if I like it that much. It may be handy if you're going for that full Maelstrom build to get your Maelstrom soul filled up and stuff, but I don't know if that's gonna be like the best thing to do. Generally, Maelstrom decks like that go for the longer game, and considering that premium format still has Itchy Tom running around, you may want to have more of a tempo game. So the way I'm thinking about Aqua Force is having a tempo-based deck, which means having your Alexandros-based moves, just having your double restand, maybe having a stronger early game, stuff like that. So those are the things I'm considering. However, I am also thinking of, what can I still pull off late game in such deck? So grade 3 wise, if you're gonna run something like Alexandros based, something like Tavas but without Tavas, then you might want to consider between Maelstrom and Naval Gazer. Now if you're gonna run Blue Wave, well, just go Valios and there you are, but you don't really get a lot of new support there, you just get your new triggers. Next up, the backup grade 3. Now either, as I said, you play just your Naval Gazer, or you take some of the older cards. For example, Tavas grade 3 is a restander. You could use that on your Excel circle, go for 21 twice, something like that. Because in essence, Tavas grade 3 is just Adelaide light. You could also run Benedict, which is basically Tidal Assault, but on grade 3, if you want more of that kind of play. Like I said, the double restand with Alexandros on Excel circle, it's an option. And that's pretty much most of the grade 3 options you have, in my opinion. Now for grade 2, there are a lot of options. We will rule out Adelaide, Battle Siren Adelaide, because we don't run Tavas. And we're also not able to play Shipra, because again, no Tavas. But we are able to play Tidal Assault. Do you take the new Tidal Assault or do you take the old one? Well, the old one is costless, but the new one could maybe push harder early game due to not losing the 5k on the first battle. Later game, that's not really ideal. It doesn't really do as much as you may hope, but early game, boy, that's good. You could literally go 9 something, 9, and without, like, it's good. It's good. So the main question you're asking in old title versus new title is, do you think the better early game is worth the soul? Does your deck build actually allow you to run the soul heavier version? Technically, if we're going for new triggers, fronts and so forth, we lose out on Petros, Supersonic Sailor and Malika, which were our 3 soul charge cards. Next up is the question, do you want to run Algos? Because Algos is actually pretty good early game, but it's pretty shit late game, to be honest. Because that first battle is just a really awkward restand when you're going for the Alexandros place. However, if you're not, well, then it's great. It's just that if you're going for the Alexandros place, and I think I will, I think it's still the best way to actually win on first stride or second stride, then you may not want to play algos. So depending on if you want to play algos or not, you either have 2 slots open or 1 slot open. One thing I considered but don't really like is Magnum Assault, because it's essentially an Adelaide that needs a boost somehow. I don't know. I considered it as an option because restanders are fun and stuff, but it's not that good. Regardless, like, I'm considering. There's also Sabre Flow Sailor, which is one of my favorite cards in Aqua Force because, well, back in G, it was very tempo. You didn't just brainlessly rush. You knew that by using Sabre Flow, you could last longer, and so the longer you lasted, the better Alexandros got. So Sabre Flow was this very interesting card that let you choose the tempo of the game. Rather than being destroyed on first strike, you could do your double Sabre Flow, get 4 new cards in hand, and you'd be golden. So do you run Sabre Flow? I kinda would love to, but then there's also Ichitom, which makes the longer game more dangerous, so maybe we don't want that. Another option, of course, is Pavrot, and actually running the whole Ripple engine. As you know, Odysseus is no longer semi-limited. You can actually run 4 now. So you could be running either 4 Odysseus, 1 Soterio, 1 Pavrot to have a very limited Ripple engine, or you could play your 3 or 4 Pavrot, 4 Soterio, 4 Odysseus and go full on Ripple engine with a really strong focus on that early game. We actually saw Tava's Ripple stopping a few times at the end of G, around GBT 13, because what they did was they would just rush super hard. So now with the return of Odysseus, that's definitely an option if you want to play that way. I will say, however, if you do that, it may be wise to still play the Sea Turtle, the 7k Sea Turtle, because that's how you really abuse Odysseus. More importantly, once you make the choice to run the Ripple engine, you also no longer have an issue with Soul, which means you can actually use the Tidal Assault from the new set, because Soul is not an issue and suddenly you have an even better rushing Tidal Assault. This was something brought to my attention by Kevin A. Yold. I'm so bad at names, I'm sorry, but he just stops a lot. He's part of SAK Vanguard. I really suck at names. Now, obviously, there's even more grade 2 options, but those are like the first that come to mind. I'm trying to really piece everything together. It's so interesting to me how many options we actually have. I seriously have never had so much fun deck building. Now, for grade 1s, the first thing you ask yourself is, do you want to run grade 1 perfect guards? Because there's definitely a reason you'd want to. First of all, Counterblast, which is really valuable now that you're no longer having access to Supersonic Sailor, because it really fucks with Ichi. It doesn't fuck with Tom, but they don't always have Tom, and you can still like guard the Vanguard with that PG that way. So if you think, okay, I'm gonna see a lot of ODT, you may want to run the 4 PGs that unflip. Next up, of course, we want Stride Fodder. Because there's actually value in rewriting from time to time, you will have access to less grade 3s, which means you will need even more Stride Fodder to make up for it. Apart from that, if you went for grade 3s that are actually good on rearguard, like Tavas or Benedict, well, suddenly you have grade 3s that you would like to have on rear, meaning the Stride Fodders have even more value because you want to be riding, sometimes re-riding, calling to rear, and stride pitching. So yeah, you probably want to run Stride Fodder. Now next up, some card that I actually really want to run, and I kind of turned him into something, is a Light Singles Penguin Soldier. Because countercharging actually has value. As I said, we lost Supersonic Sailor, and we don't actually have that many high impact grade 1s. Sure, we do have Ortia as an option, but again, Counterblast and Soul Blast, especially when you run the new Tidal, Soul is getting even more sparse, so it's like, whoa, you really have to consider what you make room for. Regardless, I do consider Light Signals Penguin Soldier. I feel like the permanent 5+K really has some value, and then getting the counter charge back, you can always see like, will I need that counter charge next turn? Sure, you -1, but do remember that 1 counter blast creates a lot of push in premium. Consider how Alexandros cost 1 counter blast, but can easily push 2 columns plus 25 and extra attacks. It's like, it's really good. So it's just an option. I am considering it. I may run that. Another card that we could consider, but maybe not, I don't know, is Vivianna or Bibiana. The wiki says Bibiana, but I'm sure it will be Vivianna. She gives you Soul, which again is pretty handy. As I said, if you're running new title, we don't have the triggers that go into soul anymore. Well, maybe you do, but I'm considering cutting them, meaning maybe that has value. Then again, it's an on-hit. Now, another card that really is interesting to consider is Chloris. Now, if you don't know Chloris, she basically allows you to guard from bind zone. It does cost soul to use her skill to actually bind stuff, but you could use the older heals, which soul charge or counter charge, and those go into bind. So first of all, suddenly you would have soul charge or counter charge, but more importantly, you are able to use Chloris' skill to guard from bind. Now, why should you care? Again, Itchy Tom. You could literally guard Silent Tom attacks from Ichikishima with cards from the bind zone, which is major because this completely shuts down the deck. Sure, they can still do the deer stuff, like they can still do insane stuff, but this at least dampens how scary they can really become, which actually gives us an edge in this matchup. It does, however, force us to run older heals. So are you willing to sacrifice the power in order to be able to run Chloris? If Itchy Tom OTT actually becomes the thing to beat, I will absolutely go for that trade-off. As I mentioned before, we also have Ortia. Ortia basically gives you even more attacks. So what you could be doing is have your title and your Ortia do your title attack first, Alexandros restand him and then swing 3 times because of Ortia. That's really good. We've been doing that at the end of G, and I don't think that will get worse. So that is basically, are those the grade 1 options? Oh no, finally, I think that's the last consideration I have for grade 1s, is Corellia. If we assume that we do run some of the Maelstrom engine, we also want to consistently be able to ride on Maelstrom. So I would consider running Corellia so you can always ditch other grade 3s in order to get the correct one. That's just a consideration right now. I did buy my 9 full art Corellias just in case, but again, it's things to consider. Honestly, there are so many damn options. Again, the Ripple Rush engine right there. We would also have to make room for Soterio and Odysseus. I probably listed enough cards to make a 100 card deck right now. That's what's so intriguing about Premium to me. There's so many fucking cool options. So those are my considerations right now for grade 1. Now getting into the starter Vanguards, the first thing you could run is of course the new one, which allows you to just, when you ride on it, draw a +1, added consistency, stops a bit of the getting stuck on grade 1 kind of stuff, stays in the soul so can't be sniped. There's a lot of reasons why you would want that. If you know that you're going to be in a meta where you know your starter won't get sniped, you could also run Bubble Edge Draco Kit, because suddenly it's the same as the new starter, but instead you would get 2 cards instead of 1. So if you're sure that that card won't get sniped, I would run Bubble Edge, but you can't be sure about that unless somehow all those clans that can retire vanish. I doubt it will happen. Another thing you could consider is Marios, to just fetch your Maelstrom grade 3s, adding that layer of Maelstrom engine in there. You could, I don't know if I will. Now for triggers, as I already alluded a few times in this video, I will probably cut Petros, Supersonic Sailor, Malika and so forth. I do see myself running maybe 2 Malikas just for the soul charge, just in case. But generally, like, the added power is just so damn good. It's the first thing I also noticed in my Blaster premium deck. The extra power is just too damn good. So we will likely be running fronts. We may want to run some crits. Otherwise, people will just start no-guarding the Vanguard way too easily. We also want to run draws. Draw PGs are an option. But again, if OTT is going to be the deck, we may just have to stick with regular draws. That's really the hardest part to me, to be honest. Like the trigger lineup, you could run fronts, you could run crits, you could run regular draws, or no draws, or 6 draws. And then do you want to run the new heals because of power, or do you want to run the old heals to play around with Chloris against OTT? Yet another consideration. Now, getting into the stride zone, the first thing I want to say I'm sure of is that I will be running 2 Lambros because it's just too free. If you rode grade 3 first, and so they got the first stride, you can G-guard into a stronger Alexandros, but you could also just G-guard into Lambros. So generally, having just those 2 Lambros ensures that you don't have to waste a counterblast when it's not necessary. And now that we have an Excel circle, hitting 4th battle is actually super easy. So 2 Lambros definitely. Then, as I said, Alexandros, we definitely want to run that as well. So either 2 or 3 Alexandros is a must in my opinion. Next up, we also want to run Megiddo because Excel circles just made Megiddo even better. If you don't know, Megiddo allows you to attack, swap a unit into that circle, attack again, and you can keep doing that. So you can actually just launch all your attacks out of that Excel circle, which is mind-blowingly good. Suddenly, instead of your Megiddo just giving +5, it actually just gave +15 to every unit because the Excel circle is just constantly pumping every attack. It's really good. Another thing to consider, if you brick really hard and you're, let's say, at GB3, you could go into Flood Hazard Dragon and get yourself 4 drive checks for free, which is just a plus. So if you're unable, like, you know, you're bricking just super hard, running the one-off Flood Hazard is actually pretty interesting, especially if eventually Link Joker comes onto the fray. You may want to be able to have your 4 drive checks regardless of what your hand or field looks like. Oh, also another thought I had, Corellia is very good when you go for Megiddo because you will always have your Maelstrom in hand, and assuming you're already on Maelstrom, that just gives you way more consistency to go into the Megiddo next turn. Now next up is Wailing Tavas. The question is, do you run Despina? If you want to run Despina because you run Maelstrom, there's actually some value in running Wailing Tavas. Now that grade 0s actually became even better to guard with, it has value to just fuck with them all around, especially if OTT doesn't become the major threat, then people will start switching to draw PGs, which makes Despina even better. So depending on how the format shifts, and if you run Maelstrom as your main and so forth, and if you run Despina, Wailing Tavas may be an interesting option as well. Like if people are running the regular PGs, Wailing Tavas becomes better again. So many considerations, but I would keep a Wailing Tavas in your binder for now. It may just end up going into your deck. Next up, we have Helical Disaster Dragon for Maelstrom. First of all, it sets up for Megiddo. It's a first strike for when things aren't going that well, or you're just playing the slower game, or you're just playing a Maelstrom heavy build. So Helical Disaster is a card I have 2 SPs of right now. It may go in my deck. And then another card for Maelstrom obviously is Engulf. Engulf is our own little ticking time bomb, because the more Maelstrom you get in Soul, the harder it becomes to guard. Regardless of how I built the deck, I think I will have a Maelstrom as my grade 3, which means that just having the Engulf in my G-Zone could mean an auto win at some point. Like, things may be going one way or another. I may see, oh, I already rewrote my Maelstrom once, so suddenly Engulf stops all the grade 0s in my opponent's hand. I saw that he run draw PGs, so by me going into Engulf, right now he can no longer use any of his triggers, meaning he can barely guard apart from G-guards. So suddenly, hey, Engulf, boom, time bomb. So Engulf is an option you may be running in your deck. I'm considering, I gotta test, there's so much testing to be done. Now finally, do you want to run Sea Breeze? Maybe you do. People saying, oh, Sea Breeze is worthless now. No, it's not. There's still value there. The only issue is that it costs 2 Counterblast. So it's like, do you want to waste that 2 Counterblast? Maybe you do, maybe you don't. It's an option. I want to test it. For G-Guards, well, we don't have many options. That's the main issue Aqua Force has, in my opinion, is very limited G-Guard options. Like, don't get me wrong, Galphilia is awesome. I am so happy we got Galphilia. But beyond that, we didn't get much. And, like, all our G-Guards hit pretty shitty numbers. So, we will run an Ice Barrier Dragon. Because just being able to have a 36k body, value. We will run an Ioannis because we want to be able to basically dismal our whole field. And also, it's really the only way we can hit any kind of high number. The problem is, however, it costs a Counterblast. You can mitigate this by flipping up a Galphilia and then flipping it down next turn, but really, The other cool thing about Ioannis is that it actually pumps up your Alexandros numbers for next turn, so that's an option. I also really want to run the Ditch and Draw. Depending on the amount of draw triggers we run, there's actual value in just being able to go, okay, go into this. What's the name again? I really don't know. It's a G-Guard that makes you discard and then draw. So you discard a worthless draw, not a PG draw. Then you draw a new card. That always has value. I really want to run that. And then, of course, as I said, the Galphilia. Those are my main things I want to consider. Maybe a Dismal if you're like in a meta where that somehow is very important. It's an option. I'm keeping my one full art Dismal just in case. But those are my primary thoughts. Those are my primary considerations right now for premium. I'm sure I forgot a few things. Honestly, there are so many cards to consider. I have my Aqua Force binder here. I can keep on testing stuff and checking stuff. But for now, I think I shared the majority of my thoughts. And now all we have to do is just test, test, test. Maybe wait for the final few Aqua Force cards. Maybe we see something super cool. Who knows? And that's all. Hope you found this interesting. If you did, please subscribe to the Solemn Vanguard channel. Click the bell button to stay up to date. And how about, more importantly, you let me know your thoughts on how you will run Aqua Force in Premium. I really want to get some deck build ideas. Seriously, I'm probably forgetting so many things, but it doesn't matter. I just gave you what I have right now. Hope you enjoyed. I will see you soon. Ciao.